It's time for a cavalcade of the most criminal and most dangerous and most incompetent corporations in America. I need 10 hours, but we will start with the corporate sector that is on everyone's mind. The high-tech giants that control our social media, our software, our internet access, and our very ability to comprehend reality.
And now, The Edwin Black Show. Sponsored by the books of Edwin Black, available on Amazon and at booksellers worldwide. And now, here's Edwin.
Welcome to the Edwin Black Show, coming to you twice monthly from Washington, D.C. Hello, I'm Edwin Black, investigative journalist, historian, and author of 215 editions in 40 languages in 190 countries worldwide, including IBM and the Holocaust, War Against the Weak, and the Farhood, as well as many other books. If you like our show's content, spread the word throughout your networks. Subscribe for free alerts at theedwinblackshow.com. And if you want to support our work, please visit theedwinblackshow.com/support. Your help, big or small, assures our complete and utter intellectual and uncensored journalistic independence. Today's episode is made possible and sponsored without any preconditions, requests, or stipulations by Faye Lincoln's very needed book, Values That Shape the World, available across the planet, as well as the Fuel Freedom Foundation, which is seeking more diverse and cleaner energy for an entire planet. And it's co-sponsored by viewers like you. If you would like to honor someone with a sponsorship, contact us. That said, I only speak for myself and for history, and the same goes for my guests. Today, we welcome viewers from across America, including our 4 watch parties in the villages, Newton, Mass., Chicago, and Tampa Bay. Overseas, I see viewers logged on from most of our usuals: Australia, New Zealand, Germany, Guten Tag Tamara, Hungary, that's coming up again, Poland, Holland, Sweden, France, Italy, Spain, Japan, probably from the Imperial Hotel, Great Britain, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, and Israel, plus other countries. And if you have a question, place one short sentence in Zoom's QA feature. The Edwin Black Show, along with our YouTube site, is global and fast growing, enjoying many tens of thousands of views. We speak frankly and without tremor to a fragmented world seeking better understanding of our tormented past, our present very, very tense, and a future still uncertain. Very uncertain. By the way, stay tuned for my special word of wisdom at the very end of the show, just before I sign off. Now we'll get to our fearless and revealing episode, Bad Company. First, a few minutes of preliminaries. The announcements. At the Edwin Black Show and our companion YouTube site, we have just released more compelling and hard-hitting episodes. First, our nerve-wracking yet stunning Central Control 2 with a short report featuring bold authors exposing a climate of fear and censorship for Jewish writers at the prestigious Authors Guild. Second, our must-see episode for Farhood Day, subtitled Coming to America. What an unhappy video of warning this is. All episodes are edited with gripping music and imagery. You can see them at theedwinblackshow.com or our YouTube channel. My appearance tour continues. I next appear with Empower You of Cincinnati. Later, I'll be returning to San Diego, Tampa, Palm Beach, and Mexico City. Always a great one. Find all my appearances at edwinblack.com/events, and let's meet up in your city. Until we meet, please stand tall. Finally, I remind my viewers of a terrible website publishing the ghoulish videos from October 7th. This site contains just some of the war crime documentation Israel will need for its prosecutions after the war. See it at Hamas-massacre.net before the deniers win their war of denial. Now, before we get to our main topic about America's worst corporations, we turn to items from the week. What a mess the world is in. We'll start with politics, which dominates everyone's conversation. We have witnessed an actual White House coup, replacing Joe Biden with unvetted and unvoted candidate Kamala Harris, and what may be deemed an illegal candidate. Biden was pressured out of a general election, one he vowed, barked, and shouted that he would win. He fiercely complained that the elites were trying to force him out. Make no mistake, Joe Biden was not mentally fit, and both the media and the Democratic political establishment knew it and covered it up. In the case of Kamala Harris, who lunched with Biden every week and conferred with him constantly, Harris violated her constitutional duties implied under the 25th Amendment. But it wasn't mental weakness that gripped the Democratic Party. The Obama group, Hollywood, and the big donor class were fine with all of Biden's missteps. Biden's dwindling mental state made him an easier puppet to manipulate. The problem occurred when the vast American public beyond Fox News were shocked after the big debate to learn that the man with the nuclear codes could not complete a sentence, and at one point blabbered, "Well, we beat Medicare." That was a quote. The polls went even further south for Biden, so the wire pullers in the Democratic Party started even greater pressure on Joe to withdraw. They waited until First Lady Jill Biden was overseas at the Olympics. The donor class, led by George Clooney, publicly declared they were turning off all donations. Politicians run for office, but money runs their campaigns. It pays for what is known as the daily burn rate, or the daily cost of the entire campaign apparatus. But there was a problem here. Biden won 14 million votes in a legal primary election, so the Democratic puppet masters, who have honed their skills over generations of political corruption, finally decided to appoint Kamala Harris in a very tendacious decision, one which saw Obama hold out until he assessed the polls more closely. Busloads of election attorneys are now getting ready to challenge the Harris election based on the fact that she was not nominated by the primary system, which in some states is obligatory. In fact, Harris has never won a primary. In the last 2020 election, she dropped out mid-primary. So we have a never voted candidate running for the Democrats. No wonder Joe Biden says he thinks that if Trump wins, it will be a bloodbath. When Biden misquotes the Trump references to a bloodbath, by the way, he knowingly misquotes a Trump statement to the automobile industry, responding to a Chinese automaker who first used the term bloodbath.
It's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it.
If they complete their plans to build cars in Mexico and ship them en masse over the border to the United States. Last episode, we gave the exact proof of that, and I've asked Eve to ensure that the verified auto industry citation is listed in show notes for the last episodes and this one. Eve will make that happen shortly if it is not already live. Now it gets worse. Prominent Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin has already leaked party plans, get this, to overturn any Trump election, and this would occur on January 6th, 2025. I asked Eve to link in our show notes a video of Raskin at the Politics and Prose bookstore, in which Raskin let slip the plan to challenge any Trump victory by simply declaring him, quote, unqualified.
The rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions, all because the 9 justices, not all of them, but...
and blocking his peaceful entry into office. In such a case, says Raskin, he and his circle will need, quote, bodyguards, and a, quote, civil war will break out. Now we turn to Kamala's choice for Vice President Tim Walz, who has been broadly identified as creating the most anti-American and anti-family progressive agenda, and it's anti-Jewish in Israel as well. It is the most anti-Jewish team in recent election history. No less a Democratic Party top voice than Van Jones, who I respect, acknowledged on CNN that Harris had gone to the darker side of the party and appealed to the powerful anti-Jewish Democratic base, and we will link his remarks when she bypassed frontrunner Josh Shapiro for her VP pick. You see, Shapiro is Jewish and pro-Israel. Palestinian Nazis were already screaming, "Genocide Joe." Make no mistake, a Harris administration will gather up the worst anti-Jewish elements in the Democratic Party. Jew haters Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush may have been defeated in the 2 most expensive primary elections in House history, and they may have openly threatened the Jewish establishment, as we see from their videos. But they will be back if Harris gets elected. She will plant them in powerful places in her administration, probably cabinet positions. Just this week, Harris met with 2 leaders of the so-called uncommitted bloc, the Palestinian anti-Israel bloc that controls more than 100,000 votes in Michigan. Specifically, she met with 2 of the main founders of the movement, that is, Laila El-Abed and Abbas Alawiya. They demanded a total arms embargo against Israel. Harris reportedly stated she was open to discussing it and a meeting would take place soon. A total arms embargo would include the Tamir interceptors that load into the Iron Dome air defense. Half the Jews in the world will be in danger of total annihilation, and it could happen quite swiftly. Ladies and gentlemen, the next election is not just about choosing a president and a vice president. The next election is about choosing whether 2 countries will continue to exist. One is Israel. The other is the United States as we know it, with our freedoms intact, including the freedom to express opinions, differing points of view, and political preferences. You are hearing this everywhere, that Harris and Walz are the most radical in history and will pursue the very agenda that I have warned against. That is the liquidation of our personal freedoms, the very prompt destruction of the Jewish state, and then the dispossession of the 85% of American Jews who support the Jewish state. Time demands I leave out 99.9% of everything I wanted to say, but I will be saying more in our pre-election coverage in episodes to come. Those episodes will be 3 weeks in the editing, but you will see them all. We'll do our best to leverage our global time zones of my team and their limitless devotion to let America know what's at stake. Make no mistake about the stake. It is a stake through the heart of the American democratic experiment and the Jewish people. Now I turn to another vital matter that burns at the heart of our awareness, America's major media outlets, the death of journalism as we knew it, and the rise of Pravda-style media. I've been doing combat at the cutting edge of journalism, print, radio, and TV for more than a half century, especially dangerous assignments, investigative projects, and often I've gone undercover. and to war zones. Yes, I've had a .357 Magnum pressed to my temple by Chicago gangsters. Yes, I went undercover to expose the skinheads before I appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show to reveal their existence to a nation. Yes, I traveled to a remote Indian Ocean island called the Cocos to focus the world's attention on the last slave state. My expose books of history, such as IBM and the Holocaust, are just extensions of my commitment to journalism. But during all that time, I myself never balanced in the fact that mass media is owned and operated by rapacious billionaires who profit from fomenting or distorting wars, or they pursue a politicized agenda. Not everyone with a typewriter or a printing press is involved in journalism. Pravda was not journalism. It was the Orwellian publication of Stalin's Communist Party. Der Stürmer was not journalism, and its editor, Julia Streicher, saw justice at Nuremberg. Hearst boasted you could just furnish him with the right photograph and he could deliver a war. Today, we see corruption at our once beloved and once revered newspaper and broadcast media. This includes the Washington Post, which crossed its last line of anti-Israel propaganda some days ago when it published a large photograph of the Druze children murdered at Majel Shams by a Hezbollah missile below a headline stating that Israel had just attacked Lebanon. This made it appear to the casual observer that the photo was not of Israeli children, but Lebanese children. The Post is owned by just another billionaire, Jeff Bezos of Amazon fame, and now one of America's most respected constitutional scholars and litigators, Nathan Lewin, has been moved to demand that the Post be federally investigated for its malinformation. He wrote a turning point opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal, no less, and later the JNS.com, plus the Morning Rattle. Don't take my word for it. I give you our regular contributor, Nat Lewin. Nat, take the camera for 3 minutes and tell us exactly what are you demanding?
The most useful counter to the anti-Semitism at Harvard, MIT, and the University of Pennsylvania has not been lawsuits, but was a hearing of a House subcommittee in which the anti-Semitism, which was not directly caused by the universities themselves, but by their failure to really counter it and indicate that it could not be permitted on their campuses, that was really affected. And the presidents of the University of Pennsylvania and of Harvard had to resign because of a publicized hearing before a House subcommittee. And I feel very strongly that with regard to the Washington Post and the New York Times, the way to counter what they are poisoning the public with their news reports is by having them subpoenaed by a House committee and having the responsible editors forced to testify and explain, if they can, how it could be that their news reports, not editorials, but their news reports are so false. If a House committee calls the Washington Post and the New York Times and subpoenas them, the newspapers would not have more rights to reject the subpoena than the universities had, because they have similar constitutional shields for things that they do that's permissible. But they should be forced to testify, as the president of Harvard and the president of the University of Pennsylvania were forced to testify before a national television audience. And therefore, I said in my recent piece that Congress should investigate the Washington Post and the New York Times. Congress should investigate them, and it's within Congress's power to do so. The law is inappropriate, and courts are appropriate in certain situations. In the case of the Post and the New York Times, the Washington Post and the New York Times, legal actions are not appropriate, and readers couldn't bring legal actions, but the committee could properly testify. On the other hand, legal actions can and should be brought, as was done yesterday in a case in which I am listed as of counsel for the plaintiffs, that was brought in Texas by Texans for Israel, and Michael Isley and others who were subject to a very discriminatory on its face executive order issued by the Biden administration, which penalizes by freezing the assets of anyone who supports really Jewish residents in Judea and Samaria, which they call the West Bank. Jews have lived there for thousands of years. The Bible is full of accounts of back to Abraham of Jews going and living in the area that's called Judea and Samaria, and that the Biden administration and the opponents of Israel like to call the West Bank. And now the Biden administration has come out with a plainly unconstitutional and illegal executive order, which penalizes anybody who might make a contribution to organizations that are designed to provide protection for Jews, Israelis living in Yehuda and Shomron, in Judea and Samaria. And that litigation, which I say was brought yesterday in the federal district court in Texas, is entitled to very substantial support. There was an article appeared in the Wall Street Journal describing that litigation by Eugene Kontorovich, who's a leading international lawyer. It really demands the support of American Jewry. So my 2 points today, and that they're really only a very small part of what the American Jewish community should be doing with regard to the situation, the very hazardous situation that's going on today, is A, the Washington Post and the New York Times should be subpoenaed by a House committee to explain the anti-Semitism and the anti-Israel reporting in their news. And there should be popular demand for such a subpoena by a House committee. And B, there should be support for the litigation, both litigation that's going on in various federal courts.
Nat, next time, give me 10 minutes notice before you file a lawsuit. I was unaware of this one. Let me go over 2 points that you made in your excellent presentation. You know, the first thing they're going to say is the media, if they're subpoenaed to testify, is, well, it's going to put a chill on journalism. I assure you that these guys are in the chill business, and that's all. And they are emboldened by feeling that they're impermeable to investigation. Now, I liken the world of journalism to the police. The police can do a great job on ordinary robberies, ordinary shootings, but when it comes to certain types of actions, the police can become excessive. Now, the media can be relied upon thank God, to report accurately when it comes to hurricanes and when it comes to crime and when it comes to ordinary media matters. But they can inject their political point of view. And we saw this when the media abandoned its role to let us know that Biden was mentally incompetent. They knew it. They've known it for the longest time, and they got embarrassed, and they helped force him out. Second, Texans for Israel, this lawsuit that you failed to give me 10 minutes notice on, but we'll be looking at it. This is exactly what I predicted. What I predicted is that they would go after the financial assets of any Jew who's ever supported Israel, and that would be 75%. And the problem is, everything I warned against for next year is starting this year. So I'm very sorry to hear that. You really gave us a wonderful presentation. And now we turn to an important conference earlier this week that I attended, a Jewish Student Leadership Summit convened by the Israel on Campus Coalition. 500 Jewish student leaders representing colleges and universities across the nation flew in to Washington to compare notes, regather their strength, and plan to move forward under the clarion call. Here was the motto of the conference, quote, "Take back the campus." It was one of the few encouraging Jewish experiences I've had this entire year. It gave me access to a phantasmagorum of hope. Our speakers came from the business world, socio-ethnic world, Arab capitals in the Abraham Accords. This is the summer Jews will fight back. This is the summer and fall when we make DEI DIE. This is the summer we remember how we got here, not because we jumped off the Mayflower, but because those like my mother jumped off the train to Auschwitz. Before Jews could dig ditches here in America, they had to climb out of the ditches over there in Ukraine. Now, these kids are fighting the mobs of Palestinian Nazis, determined to make them flee the campus, flee their homes, flee their neighborhoods. No way. We're on the sidewalk and we're not running. This is the season we fight back. As part of that, Jews everywhere are resorting to the courts for protections. You will recall a few weeks ago, June 23rd, the synagogue Adas Torah in Los Angeles was besieged by Nazi-style thugs. At the time, I pleaded with our fight back litigation organizations to sue the hell out of these perpetrators for violation of the FACE Act, FACE, which in paragraph 2 makes obstructing egress and exit to and from a religious institution a federal violation. Well, others thought the same. Days ago, a Turning Point lawsuit was launched by Stand With Us Center for Legal Justice against Code Pink and the other thugs. This is big. This is what we need. And here to tell us about it for 3 minutes is a member of the Stand With Us Center for Legal Justice team, Carly Gamble. Take the screen. Who the heck did you sue? Under what law? And how many millions of dollars are you asking in consequence of that pogrom-like riot at the Los Angeles synagogue?
Edwin, you're exactly right. This is exactly what we need to be doing to fight back the mob style tactics that we're seeing. And so in this lawsuit that the Stand With Us Center for Legal Justice, the SCLJ, of which I am privileged to be the director, we have sued Code Pink, we have sued the Palestinian Youth Movement, and we have sued Westpac. These are the three organizations that are responsible for organizing this mob that as you noted, is responsible for not only blocking access to the synagogue, but for harassing and assaulting Jews as they attempted to enter the synagogue. There's ample evidence that these organizations, both on a local and national level, put out the call for individuals to come and be a part of this mob. Over 200 individuals participated. And again, they are also named as does at this point, and we'll hopefully be able to identify them. But the crux of the lawsuit, as you mentioned, is twofold. It's claims under rather two different statutes: the Federal FACE Act, the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, which might sound a little strange. Why in the world does this have anything to do with houses of worship? But as you noted, there is a provision in the FACE Act that does not deal with clinic entrances, but instead deals with blocking access to houses of worship. And that's exactly what happened here. And so we have brought suit under both the Federal FACE Act and the California state corollary. And so under those statutes, damages are available for each violation of the act. And so again, if you're looking at 200 different individuals who acted in violation of the act, and then you multiply that by the statutory damages, we are seeking no less than $4 million under the two statutes. So as you noted, this is big. It's exactly what needs to be done. Targeting Jews in their communities as they are going about their lives, and certainly as they are attempting to exercise their First Amendment freedom of religious exercise, is absolutely unacceptable. There's a reason that the free exercise clause is part of our First Amendment. It is one of our first freedoms. It is one of the most cherished rights and to be protected to the utmost in this country. And so, again, that's the reason that we brought this. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention just the courage that it takes for individuals to be a part of a lawsuit like this. And so I'm immensely grateful to the individuals who are members of the SCLJ and have allowed us to represent them in this lawsuit.
Well, thank you very much, Carly. I know that Stand With Us is the most important Jewish organization in the United States for its broad umbrella of activities, both in service and defense. And I know a lot of people have a tradition of being involved with the Anti-Defamation League, the American Jewish Congress, the American Jewish Committee. This is all passé, ladies and gentlemen. These guys are just selling tables to sustain their banquets. It's Stand With Us and its efforts to defend Jewish rights. And also, they work in concert with the Brandeis Center and many other organizations which are coming to the fore now. And this was said in the ICC Congress. We need to sue, sue, sue. And this is what I've been talking about for a year. Sue, sue, sue. Run around and then sue. Now, I have to say...
One minute, Edwin. Sue does not always work. And my point is that with regard to Harvard, Penn, MIT, the hearings that were held by the House subcommittee did what a lawsuit could never have accomplished.
Well, yes, you're very right. Sue isn't the only response for our needs. We need to boycott. We need to not hire these guys with the Harvard pedigrees. We need to have groups like Canary Mission. But litigation is one of the ways that we can fight back as individuals, that we can seek some measure of justice. Now, before I move on from Carly, who did a fabulous job, who is really working hard with Roz Rothstein to support our rights, and so is Aliza Lewin. I've been predicting this for years, and it's coming faster than we thought, and the world must prove me wrong.
I keep saying.
Bravo.
Okay, now I had to leave so much out, but now we have to get to our main theme, bad company. It's time for a cavalcade of the most criminal and most dangerous and most incompetent corporations in America. I need 10 hours, but we will start with the corporate sector that is on everyone's mind. The high-tech giants that control our social media, our software, our internet access, and our very ability to comprehend reality and preserve our rights of privacy. I turn the screen over to the Edwin Black Show's chief privacy guru and high-tech analyst, Sharon Polsky. Grab the screen, Sharon, while Silicon Valley still permits you to do so. Speak without fear, no matter what they can hear.
Well, Edwin, I don't know that it's so much Silicon Valley on its own. There's an awful lot of players that work against us all, and their motives are something that we need to pay close attention to. And you're absolutely right. Big tech has changed our lives. It's changed us. We used to be able to remember phone numbers. We read books. We were able to use a map. People use wayfinding apps now because they have no idea what a map is. They scoff at anybody who dares to even unfold one. We had conversations with people that disagreed with us. Now there's apps for everything. And there's tech companies in every conceivable sector that have essentially said, trust us, use our products. They're convenient. But I've always wondered, they seldom say who it's convenient for or what convenience it's going to facilitate. We're seeing that very swiftly, particularly in, well, certainly the UK and many American cities, Canadian cities also, around the world. You look at each of these companies, they have inspiring mottos like Google's "Don't be evil," that became "Do the right thing," or Facebook's "Move fast and break things," IBM's "Think," and of course Apple's motto, "Think different." But those mottos mask the push to ensure that we become reliant on tech and don't think. And the motivation behind that push is also hidden. Right now, I did some quick research. There's over 2,000 job listings for psychology roles in Google and over 1,000 listings for psych-related roles at Facebook. Some of them counsel their coworkers, but many more are focused on ensuring that the design and the content is addictive. Because in keeping people doom scrolling and serving up ads to those eyeballs is lucrative for them and for the multi-billion-dollar data broker industry that trades on the information that they capture about us all. Some of the ads we see are for AI-powered apps that create non-consensual sexual images, non-consensual, or for synthetic adult and child porn, or what's referred to as undress apps that strip away the clothing from photos of real people, mostly young women and female celebrities. There's others for spyware that can be used to stalk and control people, usually wives and girlfriends, or journalists, or politicians, or increasingly political dissidents in repressive regimes and democratic nations. The developers of any product can pay to place their links against specific search terms, so the results get served up as what's referred to as promoted results. It's at the top of the listings, and it means that Google is getting paid to put each of those ads in front of users. And the revenue to be had from online content and the trade of personal information and the images, it compares to the GDP of some nations. One company, Alo Holdings, you might remember it as MindGeek, it's behind an adult entertainment conglomerate that includes Pornhub. It's the Canadian-owned internet porn video sharing website that describes itself as having helped to shape the world's porn viewing habits. Quite the claim. They have millions of videos, including what they call hard porn. It's available for free on Pornhub. That was 12th most visited website in the world in June of 2023, ahead of LinkedIn, Amazon, and TikTok. Pornhub has come under fire largely thanks to journalists who have investigated and found an awful lot of information relating to the content that's been posted, often created by production companies such as Girls Do Porn and Girls Do Toys that faced accusations of tricking young women into filming porn. California charged them with sex trafficking and other offenses related to deceiving and coercing young women to appear in the videos. And ALO eventually acknowledged in U.S. federal court that it had profited for years from porn content that depicted sex trafficking victims. And it agreed to pay damages to women who said that porn videos of them were posted online without their consent. But it took years for Pornhub to completely remove the content, all the while profiting from its availability. Ironically, ALO is owned by an investment group. I love the name, Ethical Capital Partners. And this organization was formed specifically to acquire MindGeek at the time, and it's made up of cannabis entrepreneurs, lawyers, and former heads of law enforcement. It's easy to find Pornhub. It's the first thing listed when you do a Google search for adult porn. And most people automatically search with Google, which has worked hard to maintain its search engine monopoly. Google knows when you go to Pornhub or any other website. It knows where you go in real life, even when there's no cell service. I found that out driving across northern Ontario where there's no cell service, but Google's Wayfinder was tracking me. I was watching myself in lifetime. Google knows what your comments on Gmail say. Their systems analyze everything. They analyze social media, the photos you post, the websites you visit, so that its algorithms can personalize the ads it serves up to you to provide you with a better viewing experience, I think they call it, or they can reveal it all to police. Facebook knows an awful lot too, even about people who don't have a Facebook account. And with more than 2 billion, with a B, billion users who access Facebook daily, and more than 3 billion monthly users, which is almost half of the world's population, Facebook certainly can exert an awful lot of influence if it wants to, shifting how we interact and with whom, how we learn, what we see, what we eat, what we believe, even who we vote for. Even X, formerly Twitter, with a mere 500 million users that many people rely on to get world news, can shift public sentiment, but they're not alone. And it's hard to pick the top 1 or 2. You asked, what are the top 5 worst offenders? It's difficult to say because it is everywhere you look. And when you look around and see the surveillance cameras everywhere, it's easy to realize that we are all under constant scrutiny, even if we don't know by who. And that's added to the billions of faces that Clearview AI scoured from the internet to train its systems. Images that it said were publicly available. I suppose, therefore, it's fair game to use and profit from, even if we didn't consent to our images being used for whatever purposes that company wants to put it. Hospitals and insurers use big tech and big data to provide treatment and to deny treatment and share with big pharma. Since the early 1980s, actually, the volume of opioids sold to hospitals and pharmacies for prescriptions in Canada alone has increased by more than 3,000%. A lot of that depends on big data, big tech. Epic Systems, the primary health record software used in the US, now lets doctors record a patient's voter status in their medical chart. That blurs the power dynamic between the patient and the provider, and especially these days, it could affect patient care. And the internet has facilitated the imbalance of power. Schools use big tech to predict if a student will drop out or become a criminal, and they can nudge students to fit that prediction. And education tech companies, serving K-12 and beyond, share information with the US Department of Education, which shares student information with Facebook. In the food supply chain, supply and production rely on big data and big tech to ensure a safe food supply. We all want that, but they also use it to modify plant and animal genetics to increase disease resistance and production levels, and to create artificial foods that not everybody wants. Falling sales and increased regulation of junk food has actually spurred Nestle, that ranks as the world's most valuable food brand and whose motto is good food, good life. They manufacture and distribute a lot of confectionery, chocolate bars, candy, junk food, feel-good food. But their motto is good food, good life. They are now transforming themselves into a nutrition, health, and wellness company and developing what they call a new industry between food and pharmaceuticals to create food products with preventive and corrective health properties like drinks and protein shakes that are meant to combat diseases such as diabetes and obesity. Is it ironic? Or was that good long-term planning? I don't know. But even innocuous and very useful services and apps like the Weather Channel collect very precise location information and a whole lot more. including the latitude and the longitude and the altimeter reading from your phone or your car when you check the weather. So the data that your car's sensors collect, from air temperature to when it starts raining and the wipers automatically start flapping, all that data is collected by the automaker to be monetized, whether you know it or not, whether you agree to it or not. Of course, the automakers say they only collect the information with the explicit consent of vehicle owners. I've yet to find those terms in any manual or contract, and I have scoured an awful lot of them looking for those terms. And what about the passengers and the children in the vehicles who haven't given their consent? You know, Siri and Google make it easy to find a world of information, and porn and violence and bomb-making recipes, conspiracies, and anything else you can imagine. And I don't have the imagination to think up an awful lot of that stuff. And the raw materials are easy to find on Amazon and lots of other places online. And the algorithms serve it all up, feeding our echo chambers, confirming our biases, and shifting our views. Yet, alongside the benefits, big tech has created social problems, serious social problems that demand immediate attention. And those companies often write the laws and the national standards to address the very problems that have been created by big tech. And those laws and standards that they write help to ensure that it is their products that prevail. And behind it all, governments are complicit. They also use big tech for good, like detecting forest fires before they erupt, even if it puts the fire lookouts out of work. They use AI to determine if we qualify for welfare. And people have been jailed because the AI claimed that some people had tried to defraud the system when they hadn't. But we all know that if the computer says it must be so. The AI gets it wrong sometimes. Increasingly, governments in democratic nations, not just repressive regimes, are using big tech to monitor what we do, where we go, what we say online, to protect democracy and us, and of course, to protect children, and to do the right thing. We see that in the UK today. They are scouring social media to find and charge anyone who comments or forwards comments about the immigration riots. Britain's regulator, Ofcom, acknowledged that there is an increased risk of sites being used to stir up hatred and provoke violence. Ofcom is telling the tech firms that they have an obligation to reduce the spread of extremist content and disinformation related to the extremist content on their platforms. And the UK government has also said that social media platforms clearly need to do more. Like figuring out whose convenience big tech is for, it's a wonder. Who will determine whether content is misinformation and what those people's motives are? But understanding the motive behind the push for more companies to create innovative big tech isn't really that hard. To some people, The Magnificent Seven is a 1960 Western movie. The modern version of the Magnificent Seven is Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, Apple, Alphabet, Tesla, and NVIDIA. There's only one of those seven whose stocks has a market cap below $1 trillion, and their combined impact on technology, computer, and consumer behavior and economic trends has been profound. We need only look at Meta's average revenue per user in Canada, a small market for them, and in the US, that amount is $68.44 per, which means the 272 million users in the US and Canada generate a lot of revenue directly and indirectly, and a lot of private sector and government jobs, and a lot of tax dollars. So it's no wonder that governments tread carefully when it comes to regulating big tech companies. And to add to the words of the magnificent Joel Grey in the classic Broadway show Cabaret, who said, "Money makes the world go round." Money is politically expedient. And we have to take it back. We have to start questioning, saying no, and being more vigorous in what we allow companies to do.
Sharon, you've just convinced me that we need another 10 hours. This is only the start. I made a few comments, but I'd like to talk more, but I can't. First, when you say the Magnificent Seven, you're not just trying to be cute. This is an actual financial term that you hear in the financial media every day when they talk about the Magnificent Seven. You mentioned the Weather Channel. Everybody knows the Weather Channel. The Weather Channel is now spying on us. it was my friend in Chicago, the weatherman from the Channel 7 News, who was working with me on a city magazine, who invented and incorporated the Weather Channel. He was the first one to say, hey, let's do a channel only on weather. And he did a great job. And I used to love the Weather Channel until they were acquired by IBM, which is the genocide king. And so I understood exactly why IBM and the Weather Channel are gathering all this information. Next, I made a note about advertising. Listen, people, when they say we care, they don't care. When they say we have you in mind, they have you last. You know who they have in mind? They have their stockholders in mind. And even more than their stockholders, they have Wall Street in mind. They have this nameless, faceless global investment stream. Right or wrong, Republican or Democratic, left or right, all they want to do is make sure that you keep their revenue streams. And most of these guys, like Wells Fargo, etc., are advertising because they have to cover up something that they have done. Next, you talked about Pornhub quite a bit. I was so shocked and I blushed. And you said they're owned by Ethical Capital Partners. Is that the name of the Pornhub owner? And this is the 12th most popular website beyond, in a group that includes the New York Times and LinkedIn and Amazon and everything else. It's the 12th. And these guys are in Canada. Is that the case, Sharon?
It is the case. And if you continue it, and you're right, this could take 10 hours, 10 days, and we don't still only scratch the surface. This is so complex and convoluted. And I agree. They make money off of us. Why? Because that is the purpose of any for-profit company, is to provide the greatest return possible to their investors, not us unless we are investors as well. When it comes to Pornhub, that problem has been used by a Canadian senator and legislators around the world to develop laws to say we have to protect the children. And I agree, children have to be protected. We can't protect them from everything, though. And their answer, certainly in the proposed Canadian legislation, is to require everybody who wants to go to a porn site to have to verify their age. Except that means everybody will have to provide their age verification to other companies. And it is going to not only infringe, but it's going to create other massive databases of information about us, about who wants to view a porn site, that also has risks. When something like that type of information gets breached, and it's inevitable these days that it will be breached, it ends up being like the Ashley Madison situation a few years ago, another website that was breached. Customers who visited that website, some of them actually killed themselves. They committed suicide out of fear of being discovered. There was a pastor in the States. He visited Ashley Madison, the adultery site, and he killed himself because he was afraid somebody would see his name in the list of customers. It has life-altering impacts when these things happen. And what many of the companies and the governments are requiring the companies to do, and the media companies often in concert, as you said, Edwin, it is going to have profound impacts in the future. And it already is having impacts that have silenced people, that have censored people, that have jailed people, that have undermined human rights and freedoms in the name of social justice, in the name of protecting democracy. Canada's own prime minister, 2 days after the January 6th insurrection in Washington, D.C., I remember watching him in a presser. He said, what happened in Washington, D.C. was organized online. It was a threat to the United States. It was a threat to a democracy, and we cannot afford to have that happen in Canada. Therefore, to prevent it, we will have to monitor everything online to protect democracy.
Yes, in
And
fact,
war is peace and hate is love.
and I'm coining a new term here, and write it down, folks. Faux malinformation. In other words, is it really malinformation, or is it something that the malinformers are claiming it's malinformation? And so, as I said last week, we must not only ask questions, we must question the answers. My final question to you, Sharon, and thank you for an excellent presentation as always. How close are we to China?
Look at the investigation that has been underway and interfered with in Ottawa about Chinese foreign interference in our elections, our last couple of federal elections. I have friends who have family in China. I've had private conversations with them, and they say, yes, the rumor is true. I cannot. I am born in Canada. I am a Canadian citizen. I have relatives in China. I cannot say anything against China, or my relatives in China will be made to suffer. China invests heavily in North America, whether it's buying agricultural land, mines, minerals, oil and gas companies. They are heavily invested. And of course, Canada has a prime minister that more than once has expressed admiration for the Chinese government and way of governing. So there's a lot of concern here, and we see it happening in other countries as well. China has helped to support, invest in, loan money to governments across the African continent.
Well,
and governments are now beholden to them.
What about the Chinese social credit system, which tracks everybody through face rec and then decides where they can go, where they can't go, when they can ride a bus, join an organization? In just a minute, how close are we to emulating the Chinese system of social credits?
That too has been promoted heavily in Canada, the EU, UK country, the EU countries, the UK. There's some proponents in the US, Australia, definitely, to get rid of cash and go to central bank, central controlled digital currency. It can't just be things like crypto, because then the government doesn't have any control over it. And of course, there is to ensure that there's a way of protecting against money laundering. There's always a very valid, good reason. And slowly, people have been encouraged to use credit cards. A lot of people don't even know what cash is, much less how to count change. And the less people use cash, the more that feeds right into the justification for eliminating it altogether. Meantime, we have governments introducing digital ID, once again, for convenience. My parents, my non-engineering parents, no longer use computers. And to deal with the government, now everything is computerized and going digital. It eliminates an awful lot of people from being able to just conduct their daily affairs. And yes, it is easily used by whoever wants to, whoever has access to the information to control our lives. And, it's like a car. It's like anything we use, anything we do. It depends on our motives and how we use it. So these technologies aren't necessarily bad. CBDCs aren't necessarily bad. CCTV cameras aren't necessarily bad. It's how people use them and what motives and objectives they want to fulfill.
In other words,
that's the danger.
In other words, it's Promethean. It's the fire that can warm us, that can bake our bread, or the fire that can incinerate our lives. Thank you, Sharon Polsky. And now it's my turn, and I look back at a half century of dragon slaying and giant killing. In my world, giant corporations can get away with anything, including murder. They just pay off $1 million fines the way we pay for parking tickets. They hide behind big law firms, big advertising campaigns, and well-paid media managers who are called media managers just because they do, in fact, manage the media. Nonetheless, over the years, I've been able to investigate, expose, and bring down the worst actions of such giants as Sears Roebuck, Honda, British Petroleum, crooked taxi monopolies, the New Israel Fund, and the biggest criminal insurance company ring in the world. In my work, I also ripped the curtains away from the 5 major genocidal corporations that knowingly became indispensable to Hitler's Holocaust: the Carnegie Institution, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Motor Company, General Motors, which is America's most criminal corporate enterprise, with a shelf full of prosecutions and penalties to back them up, and America's most genocidal company, the linchpin of Hitler's war against humanity. I speak of IBM, International Business Machines, which organized all 5 phases of the Holocaust: identification, expulsion, confiscation, ghettoization, deportation, and even extermination. So now humanity knows, where did Hitler get the names? From IBM and its convicted extortionist war criminal president, Thomas J. Watson. And yes, tomorrow morning, Nat Lewin will not get a lawyer letter from IBM or any of these criminal enterprises complaining about what I say. They hide behind slogans, logos, PR people, golf shirts, and high-paid attorneys. But there are many, many more bad guys still operating in our midst. Save your breath. I only have 5 minutes, so don't ask me why I left out so many of the brutish cast of scores of companies. We'll get to them another day. But let's just look at the banks. America's most criminal bank, is Wells Fargo, which paid $3 billion in penalties to resolve their criminal scam, which between 2002 and 2016 pressured employees to open millions of accounts and other products for customers under false pretenses and even without consent, often by creating fake records or misusing customer identities. I love their website, but remember, Wells Fargo has a giant, recent criminal history. Bank of America, what a deplorable bank. I could do an entire show on the bad actions of Bank of America. Last summer, in 2023, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau ordered Bank of America to pay more than $100 million for systematically double-dipping on fees imposed on customers, withholding promised reward bonuses due to their credit card customers, and misappropriating sensitive personal information to open accounts without the customer's actual knowledge or authorization. So that led top federal penalties to be imposed of $150 million, just that one case, to add to the hundreds of millions of dollars they have been fined for other violations. The nation's most incompetent bank, Truist, the humped camel created by merging 2 thoroughbred local banking organizations. They were SunTrust and BB&T. Truist, what a fake name, sends checks to the wrong recipient with a similar name, is now financially troubled and cannot be trusted to provide normal banking information. Truist relies on wonderful, hardworking employees to cover for the bank's many mistakes and shortcomings. The company is being sued in numerous jurisdictions for mismanagement. For example, a Southwest Florida couple is out nearly $1 million after they were tricked into wiring money to a fraudulent account that Truist was supposed to monitor and prevent. In addition, Truist Bank could have prevented an October 2023 data breach had it followed applicable, required, and appropriate protocols, policies, and procedures to protect their information. And that has led to a massive class action suit now underway. They are squeezing their customers for fees and less services to cover their shaky ways. Earlier this year, Truist was compelled to pay $6.3 million to end an litigation over an improper rate cut it tried to get away with on older pre-merger deposits. If you are considering Truist, run for your life. Many times we have very useful companies that make our life easier, but they have terrible aspects of their otherwise lofty operation. For example, Instacart helps an entire nation in its remote convenience shopping, but it is also a life or death service for many elderly and shut-in people, especially the elderly, who will actually starve without Instacart. Yet for millions of customers, Instacart, not infrequently, maintains only 2 customer service representatives. So some people must wait for hours. And if you're an elderly person and you depend upon the food and you really can't do this, this is a life-threatening situation. I have personally helped out more than a few elderly get a response out of Instacart, and it's not easy. Their neglect can help starve people. We look at UPS, a wonderful delivery service, which is manned by a tremendous dedicated team of delivery and package sorting people. But UPS has now installed some sort of artificial intelligence in their phone operation, and you cannot actually speak to the company without first getting your inquiry cleared by a robot. This is dehumanization and makes UPS, the first company to do this, makes UPS one of the most dangerous companies in America, not because it can't get packages absolutely there overnight, but because it has started a terrible trend of forcing us to talk to this company only by having our inquiry be approved by a robot. And by the way, under no circumstances will I speak to a robot. And if I am forced to, in a fake human being that says, oh, I can't understand you, help me understand what you're saying. When I finally get to a representative, I tell them I do not want to talk to a fake human being. And with that, I'll get ready to take our questions. It just bothers the heck out of me that we don't have time to do more. So let's get the watch party in the villages. As Kamala Harris's vice presidential pick Walz said that a freedom of speech is not a constitutional right. Yes, he is absolutely, we've got it quoted, and I'll have Eve put that video up. He made a point that said that freedom of speech is not a constitutional right, and basically this was an outgrowth of criticizing COVID. Thank you for your question. The watch party in Newton, Mass. It's another one on Walz, and they want to know, is he guilty of stolen valor? That is, did he claim to be in a wartime situation when he was not? The fact is that J.D. Vance was in Iraq, was in combat situation, and that's true. But this guy Walz walked away from his unit. There's a question as to when he walked away, whether it was just before or long before they knew they were going to ship out to Iraq. That said, he has now gone in public situations numerous times and said, I carried a gun in war. And this was analyzed by the fact checkers at the captive Democratic network, CNN. And even then they said, quote, this is absolutely false. And we could put that up as well. The watch party in Chicago. Why did Truist merge? All right, Truist was with that fake name, and that should set you off right away, took 2 wonderful local growing bank companies. One was called BB&T. They were all across the East Coast, and the other was called SunTrust, and merged them. And they claimed, oh, it's going to be great for customers. We're going to give you services like you never saw. The fact is they've curtailed their services. I've personally looked into this, and I've tried from time to time to ask them, can you tell me one benefit to your customer base of this merger? And it turns out that there's nobody in the United States of America or in the Truist company who can explain why the company merged into this awful behemoth, which is now called Truist. And in point of fact, I've discovered that it's only to benefit the insider traders who made money on the Truist merger. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I promised my editors that I would not go 2 hours out, so we're out of time. I want you all to hold for my closing word of wisdom, just 1.5 minutes away. But first, I want to thank my very, very knowledgeable guests, Nat Lewin. Thank you, Nat. Carly Gamble, and the ever knowledgeable Sharon Polsky. I also thank my talented international team, including Richard in the Philippines, Luca in Serbia, Christine, hi, in Indiana, Eve in New Jersey, Lance in Detroit, and Nick in London, as well as many others in numerous additional cities around the world. My team, each of them, is comprised of very dedicated people. I and we all owe them. I'll see everyone back here in 2 weeks at 3 p.m. You want to be a friend of the Edwin Black Show? Go to theedwinblackshow.com/support. Keep me independent. You want to hear me in person? Watch my website for events. Consult my events page at edwinblack.com. Until then, head over to any Barnes & Noble in the USA or any Amazon, Walmart, Apple Books, Google Books, or Kobo platform in 190 countries across this roiling, toiling, boiling planet, where you can find any of my 215 book editions, such as IBM and the Holocaust and the Far Hood. Now, you want an autographed copy? Hit my personal website, edwinblack.com, and click books. Get access to alerts to participate live in future shows at theedwinblackshow.com. You'll see a much enhanced and exquisitely produced version of this show and our prior episodes by subscribing to our YouTube channel at The Edwin Black Show and click the notification button like tens of thousands of others have. You will love them. We put new ones up each week, produced by a bold international crew. Follow me at Edwin Black Book on X as well as Facebook. And now for my closing word of wisdom. And I should say, I had written one and I've scrapped it. And this is my new word of wisdom. If I'm right, it's your fault. I'm zooming out from our nation's capital. Bless all of you.